Good evening, comrades. So as you know, we talked about May Day is coming up on Tuesday, so we have a few more days to organize, to get ready, get our comrades and friends pumped up for May Day. As this is our 6th year, so let's make it not just 6 years, make it 10, 20, 50 years of May Day celebrations and organizing. So as you all know, right now we're going through the 2012 U.S. presidential elections. Pretty much the candidates concerned over immigrant rights is mainly ignored at the national level. Instead, the capitalist politicians, either Democrat and Republican, are continuing the assault towards the immigrant community. Many right-wingers, there are also many fascist elements of the right-wing movement, are calling for stricter laws against undocumented workers and their families. This is taking place throughout the U.S. as the hysteria of the bourgeois elections is rising for the benefit of the capitalist ruling class, which is this tiny elite. It is important for my talk to discuss the ongoing struggle for immigrant rights and how the PSL continues to be in the front lines. We all know how the capitalist offensive against the U.S. working class includes the immigrant community, which is one of the most exploited and oppressive communities in the U.S. So over the last 10 years, the struggle for immigration reform in the U.S. has escalated. Capitalist politicians have imposed our immigrants some of the most odious legal quote-unquote reforms in the name of national security and economic growth. Now in a time of economic crisis, immigrant workers are facing new challenges that make a sustained independent mass struggle even more critical. One of the most significant hurdles that immigrants now face in the struggle for equal rights is increased racist scapegoating by states. Under the guise of immigration enforcement, quote-unquote, several states have enacted measures that hark back to the days of segregation. These laws, the most infamous of which is Arizona's SB 1070, obliterate due process of law and constitutional protections by encouraging local police to detain and harass immigrants based on race and national origin. These laws also deny immigrants basic rights such as the right to a public education. So for the past 2 years, a number of states, including Georgia, Utah, Indiana, South Carolina, and Alabama, have passed such laws. Right now, Alabama's law goes so far as to turn public school administrators into ICE agents. These states have tried to hide racism behind claims that such laws are the legitimate exercise of quote-unquote states' rights. We all heard the same thing 56 years ago. Back then, what was called Jim Crow laws, states' rights. Same thing, same argument. The states claim that the federal government is not being tough enough on immigration, and it is up to state governments to step in. The states also claim that the laws do not target people based on race, but instead serve legitimate state interests of curbing unlawful immigration and use of public services. In just the first 6 months of 2011, the U.S. government deported over 46,000 moms and dads, in most cases separating them from the young U.S. citizen children. The report does not include the number of citizen children of these 46,000 parents, but it is estimated that there's around 15,000 U.S. citizen children in foster care because of these deportations over the next 5 years. Parents risk losing custody of their children forever, as children in foster care have been outrageously deemed by the state as quote-unquote abandoned by their parents. Even though they're deported, they're saying that they're abandoned. In reality, they want nothing more than to be together. There are currently 4.5 million U.S. citizen children with at least one undocumented parent living in the U.S. And every day their right to live in a family with a mom and a dad are threatened. In an attempt to score political points with the anti-immigrant sector of the electorate, all the presidential candidates, especially right now Romney, who is now considered now the main candidate as the Republican nomination for president, are competing to pose as the quote-unquote defender of the border. They're defending the border for us. So in reality, they're doing nothing more than engaging in political posturing and using the lives of millions in order to win votes from racists. So the PSL fights for socialism, as we all know, because it is a system with the right to live freely and with your family would replace the right of Wall Street and the big business goons to profit from undocumented workers and the immigration system. Capitalist politicians from both the Republican and Democratic parties share the same fundamentally reactionary orientation toward the immigrant community and are not entertaining any possibility for comprehensive immigration reform in a presidential election year. For them, that is pretty much not possible for them. Republicans continue the ongoing push for tougher security on the U.S.-Mexico border, training state and local law enforcement, and terrorizing immigrants with racist raids and deportations. Republicans like Mitt Romney call for the abolition of birthright citizenship. He supposedly proclaims that this basic right is unconstitutional and, according to the party platform, should be abolished. This means that millions of immigrants will lose their basic rights as U.S. citizens. Again, this is guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution that was passed right after the Civil War. Democrats like Obama call for penalty fees for immigrants who want to become U.S. citizens. They support a slow process where immigrants who apply for citizenship will require them to go back to their home country, pay other fees, and wait certain periods of time in order to be processed. During the 2011 fiscal year, it is important to note that the Obama administration deported almost, or it could be more than, 400,000 undocumented immigrants, which was the highest on record. Both parties are supporting for tougher security at the U.S.-Mexico border and increased funding for homeland security. Certain sectors of the immigrant rights movement are putting their weight behind Obama in hopes that the Democrats will help advance this struggle. However, despite making occasional concessions to please Latino voters, the Democrats are no more interested than the Republicans in seeking legalization and equality for the millions of immigrants. People demanding democratic rights for millions of people intensified the immigrant rights movement in 2006, which was 6 years ago. Facing a movement of millions demanding these rights, the ruling class mobilized against it. Hundreds of thousands of immigrants were deported by federal authorities in 2007. Many of us were there in 2006, in May Day, and in March, where millions of people marched in LA. So local governments introduced, and in some cases, passed racist, English-only laws. And bourgeois pundits and media outlets supported the neo-fascist groups like the Minimum Project. To the U.S. ruling class, all of these forms of repression are acceptable responses to the immigration issue. They want to brutalize the people who work the hardest to keep society functioning, which are immigrant workers. The PSL's intervention of the bourgeois elections brings out our stand for immigrant rights for the millions of undocumented immigrants. So right now we have the Lindsay Osorio campaign, which is bringing out the demand for full legalization and full rights for all immigrants as part of its electoral platform. The PSL believes that the struggle for legalization for undocumented immigrants is a top priority for the U.S. working class. This is also why it is important for all of us to get involved in the upcoming May Day March and Rally in downtown LA. As we know, the March and Rally will start 1 p.m. at the corner of Olympic and Broadway and march to downtown LA. We'll be on the streets demanding legalization of workers' rights, so make sure to invite friends, co-workers, everyone else to make this another historic event. So we should continue intensifying the struggle as the capitalist ruling class escalates their offensive against workers, which they have done since capitalism existed. It is also important to know that this week it is the 20th anniversary of the LA Rebellion. We are hearing the news right now of the LA Rebellion that took place here in South LA in 1992. Many of us have a clear idea of how this spontaneous uprising took place due to the rampant racism that exists in the U.S. and continues to exist today. We all know how the police functions under capitalism. I clearly remember when I was 7 years old, living in South LA, I call it South Central LA, and how people were angry at the racist LAPD and repressive apparatus of the capitalist system. People saw how the state called the National Guard and Marines to repress their own people, the rebellion. So I remember as a kid, and I told my kids as a teacher that pretty much the cops came in, repressed the movement, but in particular was the African American community and the immigrant community, which is the most predominant community in South Central. So again, it's important to know how this rebellion, it is important to, as a lesson for many of us as revolutionaries, because any kind of spontaneous movement can come up we should be ready as a revolutionary socialist party. So any spontaneity where the masses go to the streets and rebel should be an opportunity to organize the working class against the U.S. capitalist system. This is why it is important to build a party of working class leaders that are trained to lead any future revolutionary movement. As the Revolutionary Marxist Party, it is important to intensify our work in propaganda and agitation to inform and organize our class by pointing out the illusions that the Democrats will supposedly bring quote-unquote change, as Abal Cape did 4 years ago. Only a resurgence of the immigrant rights struggle has the potential to achieve the goals of justice and true equality. No capitalist politician, Democrat or Republican, will pass laws ensuring immigrant rights until the pressure from the movement becomes unbearable for the capitalist ruling class. We learned this from the civil rights movement, so it can happen. We just have to go to the streets by the millions to force them. So the movement must continue raising the banner of legalization and for full rights for all immigrants. So thank you.